Thanks for joining us at DynamicsCon. Merlin and I are so excited to be here. Thanks for hanging out until the last day. I think we're one of the last sessions here and pretty excited to kind of share some content with you guys on customer insights and marketing. Huge thank you to DynamicsCon for allowing us and having us part of this presentation. We're really excited to be here. And then also there is a live chat going on. So make sure that you interact with us, ask questions. We'll answer them as we can during the presentation, but always would love to open up for some conversation at the end and answer any questions that we can live. So today we're going to be talking about customer insights and marketing, how to use them together. My name is Ashley Steiner. I'm the manager of business applications at Flex Technology Group. I also host a podcast called the Dynamics Hot Dish along with Merlin and then our third co-host, Liz McGlennon. I also volunteer with a nonprofit, TechFluent. I think Merlin will give you guys a little more information about that. And then I'm just pretty involved in the community from a user group perspective, forums, things like that. And I'm based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Merlin, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name's Merlin Schwaiger. I am a Power Platform enthusiast is what I like to call myself. As Ashley mentioned, I'm also co-host of the Dynamics Hot Dish. We are two of the three. And I'm also assisting out with the TechFluent nonprofit, which is actually a sponsor of DynamicsCon. And so I think you can find out more about what TechFluent's all about on our sponsor session. And I am based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and am also at least mostly casually involved in our local user group here as well. Here's our agenda for the day. So today we're going to start out talking about customer insights, go through a little bit of slides there, talk about what it does, and kind of differentiate it from MDM or data warehouse solutions. Then Ashley's going to talk about Dynamics 365 marketing and similarly kind of what it does and why to use it versus some competitive solutions. Then we'll discuss how these two tools are designed to kind of work together and how you could use them in tandem. We'll go through a bit of a demo, and then we'll talk about some real-world scenarios that come straight out of the real world. So with that, I will begin talking about customer insights. So this is one of my favorite customer insights slides that I stole a couple of years ago from somebody at Microsoft. And he referred to it as the washing machine slide, which I really like the analogy because I feel like the slide visually looks like a washing machine. And also it kind of applies to customer insights. The idea is that it's going to be doing a little bit of washing and cleaning on your data. So I don't know, I feel like it's an appropriate comparison. So the idea behind the slide is to encapsulate what customer insights brings to an organization, moving from left to right, from data to action. So on the left-hand side where you've got data, you can see this can be internal or external data. So internal data can be maybe you have a CRM platform, an ERP platform, a marketing platform, potentially customer service platforms, web stores or other hosting platforms, maybe mobile solutions. Any of those different systems may be different. You may already have them integrated to some degree or not. But the idea is to bring all of that data from all of those systems that are internally that have anything related to your customer and bring them together, as well as external sources. And so that external data can be things like website activity or data from partner organizations, geographic data, potentially social information. And so you bring all of that data together through the connectors that are built into the platform, and those connectors are all sitting on top of Power Query. So anybody who's already familiar with other components in the Power Platform, you may already be familiar with Power Query. For example, Power BI uses it to ingest data, data flows use it to ingest data. So that tool is the same, the process is the same to bring that data through all of those various connectors, and then you're sort of dumping it into customer insights. And behind the scenes, for anybody who's curious, all the data is sitting in a data lake, but through the user interface, you're never actually directly interacting with that data lake. you're using kind of the point and click interface to do all of these processes. So you bring all of your data in, so that's that ingestion. You go through a mapping and matching process to identify for the system how to tie records together between different platforms. So how do I know that this account that's sitting in my CRM system is the same as this account sitting in ERP, that's the same as this one sitting in my support system. So you map all of those data points together. You can enrich the data, which we'll see a bit more when we get into the demo. And then you're able to sort of view all of that and conflate that data together and kind of expand upon it based on what you have available to you. And that data is not necessarily just the demographic data, but can also include your transactional and your behavioral data. So your idea is not just to unify your view of the customer record itself, but to also know how are my customers interacting with my organization, what are the transactions that they're executing with me, what are the different behaviors that they're having, how many times are they hitting different pages on the website. All of that sort of data, combine it together into that unified picture of your customer. And then you drive it off onto the right-hand side. And so that driving then carries me into the actual insights. So I can do reporting and analytics to see those insights. I can apply this data and run it through perhaps artificial intelligence or machine learning processes to enhance it, augment it, or show me things that maybe I didn't see just by looking at it. And then I derive this all the way out into action. So now my analytics maybe runs through Power BI. Maybe after the machine learning model does something with it, I stick it into an app or I drive it out to my users in some other mechanism. And then I get finally to my channels of engagement where I'm actually taking action on this data to interact with my customers, to drive behaviors of my customers, and to sort of push that information out into action. I think one of the big sort of questions that I've encountered, both from customers and actually from the salespeople that I've worked with, is a little bit of confusion around what is a customer data platform and how is it different than master data management and how is it different than data warehouse. And so I try to break these up, I think, into how I look at these to help sort of drive which tool is going to be most appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish. So from the customer insights perspective, so Dynamics 365 Customer Insights is a customer data platform, or a CDP. The idea behind the customer data platform is mostly to drive marketing and analytics. It's ingesting that data in the background, so it's sort of a background processing. And because of the AI that Microsoft has built into the platform, the implementation cycle doesn't actually have to be that heavy. So in general, again, depending on how many data sources you might have, you're looking at a relatively lightweight implementation, maybe a matter of weeks, as opposed to months or years, to get a CDP up and running and to start being able to kind of take action on the data that you have. Contrasting with that, you have maybe your master data management platform, which I like to think of more as kind of a traffic cop for your data, right? So the MDM solution is actually sitting kind of in the middle of your data platform. And as data moves between different platforms and applications, MDM is cleaning that data, making it consistent with whatever sort of formatting or other processes that you're applying to it, and then cascading that data out to all the other applications that are going to need it. Because it is interacting as that traffic cop, it is running in real time or near real time, so it's behaving as the data is changing. But MDM solutions can be pretty heavy to implement. So obviously this also depends on how many source systems you are tying together. But because you have to define the rules and because it has to sort of be able to interact with those things in a real-time fashion, it can take a lot of work to stand up an MDM. So I've definitely spoken with customers who were approaching the end of the second year of their MDM implementation, and they felt like they were getting pretty close to done. And then sort of on the far side, we've got the data warehouse, which I feel of these three is probably the most common in most organizations. And I feel like a data warehouse does a really good job, again, at driving analytics, but then also data retention, which gives you access to more maybe trending data, potentially data, disaster recovery. Some people use their data warehouse data as sort of a mechanism whereby they might be able to back up or restore some of their data. It is still processing data in the background, similarly to the CDP. But I do feel like generally a data warehouse is a little bit more effort to implement because, again, for each of your source systems, you're probably spending more time defining the rules, defining what data you want to pull out, and how to merge that data into the warehouse itself in a way that kind of makes sense with the rest of your data. So as you can see, the overlap here is the analytics, but I sort of feel like the CDP is there to drive action. The MDM solution is there to do maintenance on your data and keep it clean throughout, and the data warehouse is a little bit more historical to maintain that history. And that's kind of how I view these three different tools. So thinking about action, we want to drive action out of our platform. How do we do that? We do that with marketing. And I will turn it back over to Ashley to talk about marketing.
Merlin, I have to say that every time you said MDM, I had like flashbacks to Microsoft Dynamics Marketing and started to get a little PTSD on that. So
thankfully, not the same tool.
Not the same tool, and it has definitely advanced a lot over the last few years. So yeah, now we're going to talk about the marketing side of how you can then take that data. But just want to give you a background on what Dynamics Marketing is in general. So there's kind of two different types or ways that you can do marketing using a tool. The first one is outbound. I would say that's more of the traditional sense of marketing, where you are pushing content out to people, whether that be on social media, you're asking them to fill in information, email blasts. So like people didn't opt in or ask for that email specifically based on an action, but you're kind of just sending information out. Also events, things like that. And then as you're scoring leads based on how they are interacting with your site or with you as you're doing all of this outbound marketing. The other side of that is real-time marketing, which is pretty obvious that it's more real time, right? Based on the name of it. So based on how people are interacting with you on your website, your social, with your emails, however it may be, you can put them into a journey that's a little more personalized for them. This is where you can integrate things like mobile messaging or notifications if you have like a mobile app based on what people are doing. And you can have more personalization within your content. And then it's, like I said, you can get real-time analytics on how people are interacting with you. There is this like teal box right here in the middle. There obviously is some things that overlap between both of them. You're going to use segments in both outbound and real-time marketing, but the way that you build those segments is going to be very different. Outbound segments are based on like set criteria. So people live in a certain location, or they have a certain job title, things like that, where in a real-time segment is based on the actions or interactions they're taking with you. Obviously, there is some sort of content personalization that you can do with both outbound and real-time, but the personalization on the real-time side, it can be dynamic as you go, and you can change it over time. And then obviously you can get analytics on both sides, but analytics for real-time are like it says, real-time. So moving forward, we're going to talk about how is real-time marketing used inside of Dynamics Marketing? So how is this made possible? Well, the biggest answer there is it's made possible with customer insights. So until the integration and connection was really good between the two systems, real-time marketing was pretty difficult within Dynamics Marketing. But what it allows you to do is you can engage with every customer regardless of where the data lives. So in the past, for outbound marketing, you could only market to the people that were in your CRM database, so within Dynamics 365. However, now with the integration into customer insights, that data can live in your ERP, it can live in your website, it can live in social media, it can it can come from, multitude of places, right? Merlin had talked about all those connectors. So regardless of where that data or where that customer data lives, you can now interact with it. And it enables you to share data, like I said, between all of those systems. And then the outcome, like what you can get out of real-time marketing, are creating these event-based journeys. Event-based is based on like the action that they take. So Let's say, I think the easiest example here is an abandoned shopping cart. So let's say somebody fills up their cart with thousands of dollars of your product, and then they decide not to purchase it. You can put those kinds of people that abandon their cart on a specific journey because they took that action in real time. You're able to set business goals like, hey, I want to get so many of these abandoned shopping cart people to come back, and then you can measure how many of them do. And then the channels you have so many more options. Like I said before, you can do text messaging, push notifications, because all of that data doesn't have to live in your CRM system. It can live in a multitude of places. So going forward, why would you use marketing? So, we called out Click Dimensions in the agenda there. Obviously, Click Dimensions has a great tool set, and it definitely has its place. I think that a lot of people still use it and use it successfully. But why would you choose marketing over Click Dimensions, this historically well-known system that has done a lot of good over the last, decade at least that I know of? Couple of reasons here is, number one, it's a Microsoft solution. So it easily integrates with a lot of the other Microsoft tools like Customer Insights, Power Automate, Power Apps. You can use those together through easy connections and integrations. It's also really flexible. So one of the things that Microsoft prides itself on is obviously all of their CE tools, marketing, customer service, sales. They're very flexible. So with Click Dimensions, you kind of get what you get out of the box. But there is no one out of the box solution for marketing. So depending on how you market, how you're using your CRM system, you can make it flexible to meet your needs. Like I said, you can really easily integrate this with other Power Platform capabilities. You do have advanced segmentation, so because it very easily connects into your CRM database, you have a really, really lengthy way to segment your data, not just on data that's on those specific records, but even within related records. Marketing has event management. This is kind of what set them apart when they first rolled out the marketing tool, was that, okay, if you need an event management tool, you're definitely going to go with marketing. This is something that has set them apart with that really easy integration. If you are using LinkedIn for specifically advertising, you can, obviously LinkedIn being a Microsoft tool, it makes it a lot easier to integrate that marketing and that advertisement that you're doing, and then getting those real-time results. Obviously, real-time marketing is the whole purpose of this presentation, right? There are options that you can do in real-time, in marketing for real-time that other marketing tools do not offer. And then Microsoft is continuing to make enhancements. They do their waves every twice a year, and they're continuously making improvements and making things better. They also take a lot of feedback from the community on what to do next. So just like all of their other CE tools, they want to hear from us and what we're looking for and what we're needing out of the tool. So pretty cool to see how much, especially since it's changed. My first experience with marketing was almost 3 years ago, and it has changed so much in those 3 years and really enhanced and developed. Marketing and customer insights are designed to work together. You'll see that in the demo that Merlin's going to do, there's a really easy connection that you set up on both the customer insights and you have to activate marketing for real-time marketing. But it's easy to set up. It enables you to engage with every customer regardless of where the data lives. I talked about that before. It doesn't have to be in your CRM system anymore. It can live across a multitude of tools or systems that your company is using. And what this allows you to do, and Merlin's going to show you this in the demo, is that you create a segment within Customer Insights, and with a lot of different capabilities and things that you have in there, and then you easily take that and you import that segment into Dynamics Marketing with that connection that you've created. And then it's always the disclaimer, right? Those of us who have been working with Microsoft tools for, I think this is 12 years for me, Merlin. It's been maybe a little longer for you.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. So things are not always as they seem, right? So it's called real-time marketing, but it's not exactly real time, which is really funny that it's called real-time marketing, but it doesn't happen like that. So the segments and the profiles that are created inside of customer insights are not evaluated in real time. You do have to set up a frequency for when those segments will refresh. And is often like the most you can do is every hour, I believe. Merlin, you might talk about that in the demo. But so that means that if you have a new customer that comes in through your website, you get them added to your ERP, wherever that data is coming from, the earliest that you can engage with that new customer is on the next refresh. So it's called real time. It's a way more often than what you would see in like the outbound marketing, but it's still not second to second real time, but it is definitely better than what we had before. So as you walk into using real-time marketing, I think it's just something that you should keep in mind, and you should know that there is going to be a slight delay. I think about an hour in order for you to actually be able to interact with that new customer as they fall into a segment. And then I'm going to hand it off to Merlin to give us a demo of how these tools work together.
All right. Well, thanks, Ashley. So let's jump into the demo. So I'm going to spend the vast majority of my time on the customer insights side, but I will touch on the marketing towards the end. So what I wanted to do is kind of show the process overall to give you an idea of what customer insights is capable of. So I'm starting from the data source. And so the data source, as you might imagine, is where you're actually getting your data from. So you can see I have a selection of data sources here. One of my data sources hates me, but the other data sources are fine, and so that's good enough for me for this demonstration environment. So after I bring in all the different data sources, and like I said, this is where the system is relying on Power Query to actually pull that data in, then I go through my unification process. And so I'm going to go over here to unification. The unification process spans across 3 different steps. So the first step is the map. And in mapping, simply all you're doing is telling customer insights, this is what kind of data is sitting in this field. And so as you look at each of these fields, you can see the intelligent mapping that it's telling me about has already done excellent work. And so it's figured out, like, because this field is called last name, it believes it is a person and it is a last name. But you can see, if I look in this list, I have various calendar data types, I have location data types, I have organizational and person data types. So what it's trying to do in this step is understand what kind of data is in each field so that can drive it into the next step, which is the match stage. And in the match step, this is where you're actually identifying how does my data get smashed together between different systems. So in my data sources, I had 2 data sources that had contact data, and then 2 data sources that had transactional data. So I'm merging my contacts together. And so what I have to do is say, well, from the website users versus the loyalty users, these are my 2 different source systems. How do I tie these together? And so in my case, I had a very simple rule to just match on email. Again, depending on your systems, you could match on a variety of different things. If I take a quick look at this, you could see it basically lets me pick this field in this data source, this field in this data source. I can choose to normalize my data. So if I know that maybe not all of my text is consistently in the right case, I can change the text. I can take out white space. I can identify that these are different type fields, and so I want to normalize on that. And then I have a precision level where I can say, well, I want these 2 fields should be pretty much the same, so I have a high precision level. I can go all the way up to exact. I can go all the way down to low, in which case it'll be incredibly fuzzy matching, but I can adjust that. I've also got the ability to do it on a perfectly granular scale if you want to get super granular. Practically, in an implementation, this is where you're going to spend most of your time in customer insights, is identifying what your rules are and how exact you want that matching to be, because you want the system to be able to identify as many matches as possible without going too far and starting to match records together that aren't actually the same record. And then the last step is the merge process. And I feel like I don't really like this name because I feel like they're actually merging the records on the match step. But what the merge is doing is now merging data together. So now between my two systems, I have two different customer records, and it's matched those together and said this customer on my website is this customer in my loyalty system. Now they're matched. Now what do I do with the data fields that belong there? And so now I can see on my different data fields, I'm taking my website user's first name over my loyalty system first name. If I wanted to rearrange those, then I can rearrange those. If I have additional systems with more fields that maybe aren't named the same thing, I can roll that data in here as well. So what I'm doing on each of these merge processes is saying, how do I combine the data that is the same across all of these systems? Like, which system do I prioritize? I can change that order by system or by field. So I can say, maybe I trust the name data from my website user's system more, but when it comes to date of birth, I actually believe that my loyalty system has the date of birth more accurately. So I'm going to prioritize date of birth out of loyalty as opposed to out of the website. So I can change that ordering by specific field. And then after I've done all three of these steps, which you sort of have to do in order, then the system will start to generate your customer profile, which we'll take a look at our customer profile. Obviously, this is sample data, so you'll have to bear with me on the sample data. But now I have a unified customer profile that's bringing together all of that data. So this is the data that I matched together in my merge process. Here's all of my sort of overall demographic data. But also part of this customer profile is now I can drive a timeline that is unifying all of my different activities. So you can see this person has made a bunch of online purchases. Doesn't look like they've made any in-store purchases. But the activity timeline is actually driven by when I set up my activities. So my activities, like I said, I have two different data sources that are just transactional data, in addition to those two that are person data. So I have online purchases and I have in-store purchases. Both of that data is then defined as an activity, and I can say included in the timeline. I can bring in as much data here as I have available. So if I've got website visit tracking, I can bring that data in as long as I can match it to something in one of my other systems. I can tie that data together. Any of those other disparate data sources that we talked about on the washing machine slide, I can bring all of that data in here as activity data and then drop it into that timeline. One of the cool integrations with the rest of the Dynamics platform is there's a native little widget for customer insights that plugs into Dynamics 365 Sales or customer service that lets you display that timeline right on a contact or an account record. So I can take that same data that I'm getting from my profile here and actually display it on my record in the system for users to be able to see. One of the other, I think, really cool things in here is the capability for enrichment. And so I don't have any of these set up in the demo environment, but I did want to point out some of these options that are available. So you'll see some of this is from Microsoft and some of it is from third parties. I believe they are continuing to add more enrichment options to this over time with other additional partners. But what this allows you to do is now take the unified data that you've put together and run it through external systems to say, how do I clean this data, fix this data, add more to this data? So examples that you can see here are like the enhanced addresses that'll let me correct my address data, or enhanced company data that will let me bring in additional information about my customers that are in my unified data now that I don't have available to me in any of my internal systems. And so you can see a variety of different components that you can bring in here from that enrichment standpoint. The last kind of thing that I want to point out are measures. The idea behind a measure, similarly to in Power BI or other reporting tools, is I want to define a metric on my specific customer profile. So as an example, if I want to look at my online purchases, you can see I've got all of my customers. They've calculated their online purchases. Let me actually go to the edit. So you can see the rule that I have built. So I'm just looking for a summarization of the total price of the online purchases. I can add additional attributes here, additional calculations. So I can do some pretty complex calculating on these different measures. And now what that'll do after that process runs is just give me a value for that amount on the customer profile. And then I can use that value on the profile to drive other pieces of information and other action, such as segments. So what a segment allows me to do now is bring all of this data together and define the list that I want to drive action to. So if I take a look at any of these different segments, I can see maybe change over time in my segment. I can see examples of the records that are in my segment. But if we take a look at the rules behind the segment itself, you can see that now in my rules, I have all of the different data sources. So this demo environment has a lot of different data sources included. So I can, out of any of those data sources, whether it is a measure, whether it is a raw data source, whether it's something else that I'm calculating, whether it's an activity, it doesn't matter. I can pull that data into my rule and use that to drive my segment. So like Ashley was talking about from that real-time marketing perspective, now I can say, if I have somebody who hits the website and they look at these 3 different pages, and I can set up a rule that says if they hit any of these 3 different pages, or they hit all 3 of these different pages, I want to include them in this segment. And now that segment is tied across into marketing, and then on the marketing side, I can drive action on it over there. And so this is where I will show you very briefly. I have a segment. It's called West Coast High Value Customers. And over here, I have a segment, West Coast High Value Customers. And so these 2 things are now tied together. And so now I can use these segments on the marketing side and actually drive that action now through customer journeys. And just for the sake of time, I'm not going to dig into how to build customer journeys on the marketing side. But all of the things that I can do on the marketing perspective, I'm now tied to that segment live in Customer Insights. And so as Ashley mentioned, on my refresh cycle, which my customer profile and all my data sources are going to have different refresh cycles, as soon as that refresh cycle runs and the profile updates and the person drops into that segment, now they're automatically going to synchronize over onto the marketing side, and then they can immediately kick off into that journey on the marketing side there as well. So just a reminder, if anybody has any questions on anything that I showed in the demo, we are monitoring the live chat, so feel free to put your questions in there. But otherwise, let us discuss in our remaining time some real-world examples of how we might actually tie marketing together. Ashley, would you like to take first go?
Yes, I think, so these are examples that are coming from my company, right? So as we dove into this topic, I saw a lot of areas that we're not using, I would say a data aggregate tool like Customer Insights, right? We have separate tools for marketing. So we have a separate tool that does our website tracking versus sending emails. Obviously, we have CE for our sales environment, but none of these are connected. And so there's no way for us to identify, the interactions across all of these systems. So, the real life example, is happening at my company where I'm trying to actually pitch this example of connecting everything into Customer Insights is that, in a real life scenario, I mean, a lot of the folks on this call, even probably listening to this presentation, you have a lot of different tools that you're using for marketing or for sales, and all of that data is in separate places. So there's no way for you to reach out to those people as they take action and things like that. So bringing something like that together inside of a Customer Insights to be able to market to, I think is really beneficial. Merlin, did you have any other examples?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think one of the things as we were discussing this session and talking about the different examples that might work in your organization or in others, I thought one of the points that you made was very interesting is that we think of a lot of this kind of real-time marketing action as driving something that's outbound, right? Like the customer abandons their cart, or the customer visits these web pages, and now I want to put them into this journey. And I feel like anybody who's ever looked at anything on Amazon and then closed the browser tab while you were logged in probably got an email later that was like, hey, did you forget? Like, the price on this went down a quarter of a penny, so maybe you'd like to buy it now. Like, all of that sort of action is a perfectly valid example of something that's outbound. But I think the example that I like is something that's also internal facing, right? So because I'm bringing all of my data together from all my different systems, I might have a measure that's showing me like how many customer service issues somebody's opened in the last 10 days. And if that number gets above, say, 3 or 4, now I want to take some action. But maybe that action isn't outbound. Like, I don't want to send them an email and be like, oh, I'm really sorry you keep calling us. But maybe I want to create action for their sales rep in my CRM system to say, you should call this customer and find out why are they opening so many tickets in the last 10 days. And I feel like having that data available doesn't necessarily just have to be like outbound marketing or sending them an email or a text message, but it can also be taking action in one of your other internal systems to tell somebody to reach out, or to apply a discount code to them, or do any of these other actions that you can do by using these tools together.
I think that's also a perfect example of escalation, right, Merlin? So like in that scenario, maybe over a 10-day period, they've had X, maybe it's 12 service cases or service failures, things like that. You'd want to escalate that up also within your company. So this is where you can take all of that data and information and be able to hand it off to the appropriate person.
Exactly. And I feel like customer insights specifically fits really well into kind of the classic, like, every company story of, we've got a lot of different systems and we're doing, like, we can get our jobs done in all these different platforms, but they're not tied together. And when somebody high up in the organization says, well, I want to see the last year's worth of, like, what did marketing accomplish last year? Then it's a 2.5 week process for 3 people to like pull spreadsheets and manually copy and paste data together to try to get this big picture of what's happened. And I feel like where customer insights really adds its value is in allowing you to bring the data together more easily, so that you could just have one report that spits all that out, and then also use it as actionable data to drive marketing. And I guess with that, we can jump straight into our Q&A. So if anyone has any outstanding questions or anything that you would like to know, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you think of it later, here's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us directly. I wouldn't recommend adding me on Twitter because I don't really twit very much, but otherwise, let us know if you need anything.
We're trying to get you to, Merlin.
I know. Someday. All right. Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining. We did have a few questions come in the chat. Thanks for sitting through, especially here on a, on St. Patrick's Day. So when we did have some questions come in, I'll go ahead and throw them to you, but open them up for discussion. So Ray has put a question in here. How is this used in the lead stage to do scoring or weighting? And I'm guessing that was during the portion of your demo.
Probably, although lead scoring is more marketing, so that might fall more into your area of expertise. I'm not actually sure. I guess I'm not sure if that data is available on the marketing side or not. I know that you can use the customer insights data to drive the segmentation, but I'm not sure if it can feed into the scoring. Do you happen to know, Ashley?
I don't. And I guess when you talk about lead stage, are you talking about where they are in the process? Ray, I'd love to know more about like what you mean by the lead stage. I'm guessing you mean where they are in the cycle of a lead. I'm thinking that there's a lot of different, I know for the scoring, there's a lot of different things you can put into the calculation for it, but definitely something, if you can give us more detail on what the lead stage is in your mind, or definitely we can get back to you on that one. So Mark asked if the data enrichment additions cost any money.
So I know that some of them do, and I think others of them don't. So I think there are a couple of Microsoft options that don't cost any extra money, but some of the third-party ones probably do. And I know that I've had some conversations with somebody else in the community who works for another ISV, and they're working on getting another enrichment option built into the platform as well. I assume that those will come with some level of subscription. Kind of to the question about like tracking which ones are being enriched to see if it's worth it. In the customer insights interface, at least with the enrichment options that I've used, when you look at customer profiles, you can see if they've had that enrichment data added to them. And I would hope or assume that any of the options that do cost money would also have some mechanism to show you like how many of your records are being enriched, maybe even point you to the ones that have been enriched so that you go look at them and say, yes, this data enrichment is a value add, versus no, this data enrichment actually hasn't given me anything that's useful.
Awesome, thanks, man.
Yeah, that'll depend by option.
Gotcha. So Ray did add, we'll skip to Ray's next question. So you said you can have scoring in the segments, and yes, you can. So you can, as you segment your leads together, you can say, oh, I want people that are above a certain score, under a certain score, that kind of thing, which is really helpful and valuable depending on what kind of messaging or what that segment is going to be used for. So yes, Ray, you can have scoring as part of your segments. Heidi, I love your question here about like advice on system admins or marketers, like how to win over management, because this is one that I'm actually currently facing. And my best advice is do a session for a conference on it so that you build an entire demo that you can then share with leadership. At least that's what I did. I don't know if that works for everybody. But that's what I did is, built this out. Merlin was so great, gracious to help with, the customer insights part. And then I actually shared the value of it. Other than that, I think that, setting up the demo, it's not hard to set up a demo of marketing, customer insights, and kind of, and you actually can integrate the customer insights trial up with different things. And so, even if you just start to show the value of what you can bring together and what the possibilities are, you could also bring a partner in to do that. I know that partners are, that's a way that I've learned a lot more. But yeah, Merlin, what other tips do you have about getting management on board of spending the money for something like this?
I like to think, and I'm probably biased, but I like to think that customer insights to a certain degree sells itself once you start to see kind of what it can do. And so I would sort of piggyback on Ashley's suggestion, which is set it up somewhere, like set up a trial. You can, within your own tenant, assuming that you haven't already set up and used a customer insights trial for 30 days and then forgot about it. You can set up a new trial. You can connect it to, a couple different data sources and pull some of your actual data in. And then use that as a way to go back to management and say, look, like I pulled in these two systems, I mashed this data together. This is what it's giving me from a marketing perspective. Here's how it can help me do my job better and either make us more money or save us some money to offset the added cost of adding customer insights then to your agreement with Microsoft. So I would say, yeah, try it out. Try it out and see what it can do.
So our next question is from Deborah. So your question here is just, can we use a good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet as a source of data for customer insights?
You sure can. In fact, if you do the customer insights in a day, as I did once a few years ago, all of their data sources are in fact spreadsheets. So yes, you can use Excel as a data source because Power Query allows you to connect directly to an Excel spreadsheet as long as it's sitting in SharePoint or OneDrive or somewhere. And then obviously, if that spreadsheet is being updated by some external process, then you can, ingest that data and those data updates over time as well.
Awesome. Is there any downside or risk, Merlin, from using a spreadsheet? I mean, I guess it getting deleted is probably the biggest risk I can think of. But other than that,
I mean, it's a spreadsheet. It's full of risk.
okay.
Is it the end of the world? No, but you can use it. It's just, right, it gets deleted. Somebody goes in and throws data out. Who knows? Spreadsheets are very fallible.
Gotcha. So Ray, you've put in I'm trying to summarize what you put in here about the accessing 3 websites, so that you could be 3 property websites. That means we can own 3 properties if the prospect goes to all properties. And I want to immediately use that data to match back to the prospect in CRM. Yes, I think in theory that is correct. Obviously, it's not. I think one of the things that I put in there was that it's not real time, right? So there is going to be a slight delay. But yes, you could take all 3 of those websites and connect it back to the prospect in CRM, and then use the weight of the lead to find out, who you want to market to. Merlin, it sounded like you have something you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I was going to say you could also, like, you might consider driving this from a segment perspective as well. Like, you could have a segment for, sorry, sort of customers who visited one site, customers who visited 2 properties, and then another one that's like customers who visited 3 properties. And so, like, at each of those segmentation levels, you could then drive them through different marketing journeys, and apply different weighting if you wanted to. And yeah, if they hit all 3, then you want everybody that's in that list to just like go in as a hot lead. You could do that as well.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you guys. Merlin, do you have anything else that you wanted to just add that maybe you've thought of since, or anything that's changed? We know how quickly things change here in the world of Dynamics. So
if things have changed, I probably have not even become aware of them yet.
Yeah.
It does look like we got another question though.
Yeah. Hi, Narav. So the question is, any recommended way to have some guard governance in place to control any accident that may occur if the user is aware of how many contacts he's sending an email blast to? That's definitely, yeah. So I know that you can provide different security inside of marketing to different people. So let's say you wanted to set it up for your salespeople to be able to send emails. You can set up something where they can only send to contacts or people that are owned by them, so you can set up a safeguard in that way where they can't send out emails to like the entire database or something like that. Now, the number of people that they can send one email blast to, I don't think that exists. But I do know that you can set up safeguards where salespeople can only send to their own, their own people, their own contacts. And then, oh, you added some more here. Does Dynamics Marketing have some quota limit? So it's not, you don't, no. No. The simple answer there to have is no. You don't pay per email like you would with other marketing tools. You actually, like, you don't have like 250,000 emails that you can send per month or something. You actually pay per contact. And so it's a little bit different than other marketing tools. How can we add some warning message ahead of time for someone who has super user admin rights? I have never had that question be asked before, so I guess I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I guess I don't really know that answer either. I assume that you're thinking of a way to like avoid the, what was that? I think it was HBO that sent out that email a year and 2 ago that was just like a test email that they blasted out to everybody in their entire system. I don't know that there is a way to necessarily prevent that in marketing. Sent up the entire limit. Well, so I think, Narav, that's sort of to Ashley's point, because marketing isn't licensed that way, you can send as many emails as you want to the users that you have in your system. So I guess at the end of the day, if you have the limit of, say, 100,000 contacts and you have somebody that has access to all 100,000 contacts and they send an email to all of them, then that's going to be your 100,000 contacts, but you can still email them repeatedly through the course of the year as long as you don't add that 100,001 person, I guess. slightly different licensing model.
So I know we're coming right up against time. Annie, I know that you've thrown a question in there. I'll meet you in like the rooms. There's a chat room like after this. I would love to answer your question. But I think we're right at time. So I appreciate everyone jumping in and sharing your thoughts and asking questions. Thanks everyone, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks everyone.